We are live. This is going to be a real video, a real stream that I do. And I need y'all to just like have a little bit of patience, okay? And we'll make it happen, okay? We are live. It's just a stream that I do. Okay. So, Jesus Christ. Okay. So this is my very real opinion about Johnny Lawrence in The Karate Kid. Now, if you know me, you know that I am quite the Karate Kid fan. I have very strong opinions about The Karate Kid. And I think that most people, when they watch this film, they don't actually understand what's going on. So, my central thesis is that The Karate Kid is not actually a film about karate, but rather that The Karate Kid is a wider narrative about World War II and the United States' role on the Western Front. Everything is indeed a metaphor, and I need y'all to just like stick with me a little bit, have a little bit of faith, and let me explain myself, okay? So the central thesis that I am presenting here is Johnny Lawrence through the fight, okay? That fight at the end of The Karate Kid, Johnny Lawrence through it. Okay, let's do it. So let me be clear. We're exploring The Karate Kid as an exploration of toxic masculinity. Yes, indeed, The Karate Kid is not actually a film that positions people as right or wrong, but rather it explores the depths of whether somebody is behaving morally, neutrally, on their own merit. Daniel LaRusso is not necessarily the good guy, right? From a certain point of view. In the same way that Johnny Lawrence is not necessarily the bad guy from a certain point of view. In every film narrative, especially one where you have a strong villain, right? You want people to believe that the villain believes that he is the good guy. So, I believe Johnny Lawrence, this man up here, by the ever-sexy William Zabka, believes that he is the good guy. And he believes that he is morally justified in everything that he does, okay? So, the question is, how did we get to here? Why do I believe that Johnny Lawrence threw the fight? Okay. So, Johnny Lawrence, the antagonist, presumably, of The Karate Kid, he's an active walking privilege. He is, he's from Encino, a very rich neighborhood in LA, if you don't know. He's the ex-boyfriend of our female protagonist, our female deuteragonist, perhaps, Allie Mills, the love interest of Daniel LaRusso, okay? He's a black belt in karate. He's the best student at the Cobra Kai dojo. He is the current champion of the All Valley Karate Tournament. On his junior year, he never lost a single point in that tournament, and therefore became the champion, okay? He's used to winning, okay? He describes himself as an ex-degenerate man! He believes that his senior year is a time to make himself better and right the wrongs of his past. Now, I believe you probably had a senior year of high school also, and you thought to yourself, this is the year where I make it all right, I get into college, and coast into my my newfound life as a newfound person, as I explore the world as a newly minted 17 to 18-year-old, right? So he believes that he himself is better than Daniel LaRusso, and that he will always win against Daniel LaRusso, okay? But Johnny, he has some character flaws, okay? He isn't capable of a civil discussion. It's very clear that he isn't capable of civil discussion, okay? He he goes out of his way to beat up people he sees as antagonizing him. And he believes that he can win back his ex-girlfriend by intimidating Daniel LaRusso, the Karate Kid, into not interacting with her. Obviously a pretty toxically masculine aspect of Johnny Lawrence, if I do have to say. And he combines this with this fraudulent front where he pretends that just wants to have a conversation, that he's actually the reasonable one in all of this, that he can have a truce. But then, you know, he does some other bad things along the way, like sexual assault and beating the shit out of Daniel LaRusso and pushing him down a hill. But Johnny also, he has some shit role models, okay? He doesn't have a dad. He is the stepchild of Sid Weinberg, who is a domestic abuser towards him and his mother. He learns karate in order to defend himself from Sid, okay? And also because he believes that learning karate will help him regain the power that he so desperately wants as a scrawny little kid, right? Johnny excels as this role, okay? He becomes the top student in the Cobra Kai dojo, which unfortunately is ran by this actual violent, child-beating sociopath, John Kreese. And it's kind of clear that Kreese's ideology will fuel Johnny's violent behavior and will be his own downfall in the end. That's the dramatic irony of the film, right? That Johnny Lawrence has actually not been necessarily the bad guy the entire time. Yes, he's done bad things, but he is a child who has been instructed. As Mr. Miyagi would say, there is no bad student, there's only a bad teacher. So here we come to the fight, and this is actually a major portion of the film, so I'm just going to switch to the actual film itself, because that's definitely allowed copyright-wise, right? So he says, I don't want him beaten, I want him out of commission. And you can look at the look on Johnny Lawrence's face. Also this Mark Hamill looks pretty sad too. But that's not who you should be focusing on. Like anytime that Kreese is saying something like sociopathic, right? Johnny Lawrence is also in the shot. Okay, so there we go. He's faking a smile towards this entire situation. He's real happy. This is a little bit far. Johnny kicks hard. That's one thing to learn here. Johnny, he is a really good fighter, okay? Johnny goes with full intensity. It's kind of clear that Johnny is really good at what he's doing, and that Johnny would never lose a fight, okay? Johnny is actually truly an American hero who could never possibly lose a fight. And I just need to have y'all witness this, okay? Okay, so Johnny's obviously the winner. Yes, cool, good. Okay. Okay, so this is actually very important. Every time that we look over to Daniel, we see a reaction shot of Johnny Lawrence looking over to the general direction of Daniel, who is now being supported by Allie Mills, Elizabeth Shue. It's very clear that she has fallen for this sweet summer child over here, who is not the toxically masculine child, right? And that she has not fallen for Johnny's tricks at all. Nothing Johnny's done has resulted in her feeling any differently about him, and in fact, has caused her to fall even harder for our child, the Karate Kid. Okay, I want him out of commission. Sensei, I can beat this guy. Then we're gonna look at Johnny over here, who's like, what the fuck is going on, man? See, that's like 1,000-yard stare right there. That's the 1,000-yard stare. He's like, uh-oh, something bad's about to happen, right? He's really, really mad. He's upset. Look at him. He looks really sad. Oh, is he getting even sadder? It's just like so transparently on his face. He doesn't want this to happen. He actually really cares for Daniel LaRusso in the end. He's actually not that bad of a guy, y'all. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. What's going to happen to our boy Daniel over here? What's going to happen? Do what you gotta do, Bobby. Oh, and yep, he's still looking over. Wait, is this really happening? Is this really happening? Oh no. This is terrible, right? Is this really happening? Knock him out. Oh! Yep, and Bobby's sorry. He's like, even he has remorse for this situation. He shouldn't have done that, right? Now let's look over to Johnny again. Is there a reaction shot from Johnny? Okay, very importantly here, let's take into mind that Daniel has this father figure in Miyagi who very, very clearly cares about Daniel to the millionth degree, and gives this really very, very kind and great parent like outlook on Daniel, that he's effectively like this very caring, very, very like paternal character who like absolutely cares for Daniel, right? But does Johnny have that as a father figure? No. Elizabeth Shue over here looking really, really sad. Daniel's mom looking really, really sad. Everybody else here is looking pretty concerned. Okay. Oh! He looks over to Miyagi. Then he looks over to Kreese. And look at that stare. Look at that stare, y'all. That is a very, very horrified face, if I do say so myself, coming from Mr. Lawrence. Maybe Mr. Lawrence isn't the evil, super bad dude that we thought him to be. Maybe Mr. Lawrence is getting this idea in his head. Up in here, in Cobra Kai head. Maybe this is not the guy I should be looking up to. Maybe this guy is actually kind of fucky. More reaction shots showing how horrified she is. Can guarantee you that Johnny Lawrence, if he isn't looking over at Daniel LaRusso or John Kreese, that he's looking over at Elizabeth Shue, right? Because that's his ex-girlfriend. And I mean, I definitely gave some exes some death glares back in my day in high school. Oof. Really, really concerned, man. Oh, even he's concerned, and he said, "Get him a body bag." He's concerned, and this guy, John Kreese, oh, he give no fucks. Oh, he is just like unconcerned. He's like, oh, this is actually a really good thing. So let's be clear here. Bad dude thinks he's a psychopath. Thinks he's a psychopath. Everybody else is wondering what the fuck is going on now. Okay, let's get to the actual fight, okay? Well, let's get back to this PowerPoint presentation, right? Now, let's be even more clear here. I went and read the script of The Karate Kid, okay? The Karate Kid gives these script notes to William Zabka, the true Karate Kid, to tell him to give John Kreese a terrible stare, astounded that this has ever happened. So now we're gonna get to the sweep the leg scene, right? After the Miyagi rubbing the hands scene or whatever, which is heartwarming, but Daniel LaRusso's gonna fight? Uh-oh, we were just about to hand a trophy to Johnny Lawrence without him earning it. Whatever shall we do? Might this be an event that might command respect from our antagonist? Maybe, perhaps. Okay, got even more looks from Johnny Lawrence over here. Kind of like really confused as to why this is all happening. That trophy was supposed to be handed to him, right? Now he's like, oh. He has to give his best smile, because now if that trophy is handed to Johnny Lawrence, it's Johnny Lawrence's fault. It's Johnny Lawrence's fault that broken knee kid either lost the fight or won the fight against him, right? Because let's be real here. This guy is a black belt in karate and won the All Valley Karate Championship last year. This kid don't know karate, has never fought against another person aside from Mr. Miyagi, who scaled to his skill level, right? Okay, let's be clear here. Johnny Lawrence is being booed right now, despite not doing anything to Daniel yet in this fight, because the Cobra Kai have broken Daniel's leg, and he was supposed to just like straight up take that trophy unfairly. So everybody already knows that he's the bad guy right here, right? Okay, we got a reaction shot. Oh, he is not sure what to do. He has to put on his best poker face. But he already knows that everybody is eyes on him. What is he going to do? You notice that punch was just kind of like a flinch moment, that like he took that hit. He took that hit and didn't try to like even defend himself after doing multiple big swing roundhouse kicks to try to hit Daniel LaRusso. It's almost as if he is either tilted because Daniel is there fighting, despite him not supposed to be fighting, right? Or maybe he has the skill level to defeat Daniel and is not applying it at this moment. This is a legitimate point. Johnny definitely lost the plot on this specific point. Daniel won that one. That was fair and square. Uh-oh. Horrified look on his face. Told to sweep the leg. Told to attack his opponent's injury. Has not been doing that so far. Has been going very, very above the knees so far. Because not only is that the rules, it's the honorable thing to do. If you're going to win fair and square, right? If you're going to not win because you are just upset that your sensei broke your enemy's kneecap, you're of course not going to attack his injury. But now you're being forced into a situation in which you actually do have to attack your opponent's injury.
You have a problem with that?
This is the classic actor is parsing what's due / lying. Very classic film technique. You wiggle your eyes back and forth, I guess. I guess people do that when they're lying or searching for an answer.
No mercy.
No mercy. He is real upset. Oh, he is horrified at what he's being told to do. Okay. So he going to do it. He going to do it. Oh, see how easy that was? See how easy that was? It's almost as if he wasn't trying. He didn't sweep the leg in that shot. He caught the leg and then whipped him around, and then Daniel rolled around a bunch, and then he tried to stomp on him a bunch until Daniel eventually stopped, and then he punched him fair and square. 2-2. Next point wins. Look at that amateur hour bullshit by Ralph Macchio, by the way. And then he's going, roundhouse kicks, pushes him out of there because he has the skill level and size advantage on him in order to do that. It's not a point because it's above the knee is a point. That was a punch to his kneecap. That also didn't count because punching your enemy in the face is against the rules in this karate tournament also. Which is why it's just a dick move. It's not a It's not a point. So, yep. Okay, this is bad. We have a wide shot here, right? And Johnny's about to really, really fuck up Daniel's knee, right? But it's not going to cut to Daniel's reaction shot. Whose reaction shot is it going to cut to, I might ask? Allie Mills! Oh! Then Mr. Miyagi. Okay. Daniel is definitely in a situation in which he would probably never win a fair fight. Okay? His leg is thoroughly shattered. Johnny has definitely fucked with his leg. Okay? So now, it seems like this is a major underdog story part, right? So we come to our famous crane kick, yes. But is Daniel gonna win this fair and square? The answer is no. Johnny here is going to throw his face straight into what is obviously a kick. Does this look like anything but a kick? Is he going to punch him? Is he gonna go like how does fighting work? This is not how it works. He's obviously going to kick. A high jump kick, a flying kick is a karate move. From this point forward, by the way, from a lot of this, you can notice that there's an obvious absence of Johnny's reaction shots, where at the beginning of the fight, we saw a lot of Johnny Lawrence's reaction shots. But now, it's almost exclusively Daniel. And this is a filmmaking technique, right? In order to make you sympathize with Daniel LaRusso in this specific instance, instead of bringing into question who has the moral position, who is our good guy or bad guy, right? Because we want to dehumanize Johnny. Because if we don't dehumanize Johnny, then all is for naught. And also, we can't bring into question if Johnny is possibly throwing this fight. Okay? So everybody's going to be POV Daniel's friends from now on. He just threw his fucking face into the kick. That, by the way, per the rules of the competition as set forward by the film itself, Johnny kicks Daniel in the face. Johnny does not get a point when he kicks Daniel in the face. The first sweep is not considered a point. The only way in which Johnny concedes a point is a consensual conceding of that point. That he deliberately gives the point to Daniel, that this is considered a knockout. And then Johnny ends up being a good sport because he's not that bad of a guy, y'all. Okay. So that's the Karate Kid. Now, let's review what we saw, okay? Let's review. He's told to sweep the leg. He does. We cut straight to Allie. Reaction shot that probably should be Daniel in every other circumstance. Johnny is match cutted to the beginning of the film where he does effectively the same thing to Daniel. He realizes that he is not a changed person at all. So he throws his face into the crane kick without making it an attack. And if you look at the script notes, even though at no point do we get a shot of Johnny staring back at Allie Mills, there is a note that says, for the first time, Allie and Johnny can look at each other without tension. Where do we see this in the film? We don't see this in the film. Why would that be put there? The answer is because, well, this is not actually the final shot of the film as intended by the script, right? The final shot of the film is actually John Kreese being upset that Johnny got second place and attempting to murder him in the parking lot, in which Mr. Miyagi comes and rescues him by like making him punch through the car windows over here, okay? But more importantly, what is the wider metaphor here? This is a metaphor, and I shit you not, my spicy take, this is a metaphor for World War II. This entire film is a metaphor for World War II. In World War II, we're told that America is the good guys. And yes, we are the good guys, indeed. But there were many things that America did during World War II that were not moral whatsoever. For example, throwing Mr. Miyagi's wife and child into a concentration camp in which she dies in childbirth, and then making Mr. Miyagi fight for his country regardless of receiving that telegram, living with the PTSD of war, and having nothing to come home to. And then as soon as he does come home, which system is he thrown into? He's thrown into segregation. The Karate Kid is a metaphor for World War II. Yes, our enemies are indeed the bad guy. Our enemies do bad things to us. But the moment that we, as humans, decide to come down to their level, react to their violence with overtly reciprocated violence, more violence than was imparted onto us, such as kicking somebody in the face, and or spicy tag, and or getting somebody wet with a hose at Halloween after they have not talked to you for multiple months because you wanted to impress his ex-girlfriend into making out with you. There are things that Daniel LaRusso does in this film that are not moral things, but are a reciprocation of Johnny's existing violence. Mr. Miyagi never says at any point in this film that answering Johnny's violence with more violence is going to solve this issue. And in fact, he says that since there's no bad students, only bad teachers, that he needs to get John Kreese away from Johnny Lawrence. So, what's a better resolution for our villain here, okay? What's a better resolution? That he gets kicked in the face and that he sees finally the error of his ways because he gets kicked in the face by this scrawny little kid that came and bested him and embarrassed him in front of everybody? Or is it more plausible that Johnny Lawrence sees that his role models are actually bad dudes and no longer has faith in his role models, sees how much Mr. Miyagi cares for Daniel in a way that John Kreese does not care for Johnny Lawrence, and sees that Daniel LaRusso is fighting in a way that is honorable, and that he himself, Johnny Lawrence, is not fighting in a way that's honorable. Allie Mills leaves Johnny Lawrence, right, for Daniel LaRusso because Daniel LaRusso is not a toxically masculine man, okay? He is the antithesis of Johnny Lawrence. He is cute. He's a little twink. He's good at soccer. He just wants everybody to be friends, okay? He's a cute little, really caring dude, and Johnny Lawrence is not that dude. Nothing Johnny does in this film brings her over back to his side, and in fact gravitates her more to Daniel LaRusso. Perhaps Johnny, motivated by his realization that he is now the bad dude, that he is the antithesis of who ostensibly is the better dude, Daniel LaRusso, decides to throw the fight and is accordingly punished by his sensei for it. Thank you for your time. This has been an overtly spicy take about The Karate Kid by me on the 35th anniversary of The Karate Kid. Watch the movie. It's in theaters tomorrow. I wish I could say that this is an April Fool's video, but I think the only thing that I really don't actually believe in this is the serious lore analysis that like reads into World War II a little bit much. I think that was just like a nice little character flavor, but I think it's a good tangential little bit. Okay, have a good night, y'all. Strike first, strike hard, no mercy.